I'm the park manager, George Shin. Welcome. I hope you guys have a great day. You're going to be with two awesome rangers. Randy Hedgepath, right back there. He's going to lead you for half of the day. And then right here, Ranger John Ball, he's going to lead you for half the day. Now, the great thing, he's my ranger here that works on this end of the park. Randy has come all the way from Nashville, but he used to be the ranger at Stone Door. So, you know, once a South Cumberland Ranger, always South Cumberland Ranger, and we like him, so we allow him to come back and visit and help us. But he's actually the state naturalist. He's got a big position, so if he doesn't know the answer to any question you have, it's okay, because he's a great liar and he'll think something up.
When we put this trail in, do you think we went in and scraped all the dirt off to get down to this rock and made all these mud holes? No, How do you think this happened?
You walked Scarf did it. You walked on it so much it eroded.
It eroded. Does everybody know what erosion is?
Yes.
Somebody tell me, raise your hand, give me sort of an overview of erosion.
It's like where wind or water like hits it so much that it just dissolves.
Okay, what I want you guys to understand and think about as we move along the trail today, every single step you take, every one of them, causes an impact. What does that mean? Say that louder.
Make something change.
It makes something change. You are changing the trail every time you walk on it. If this bridge wasn't here, what do you think this little area would look like?
It'd be it'd be a big mud puddle.
It'd be a great big old mud puddle, wouldn't it? Okay, so here particularly, we knew it was gonna be wet and muddy, so this little boardwalk was built, because this area right here will be very sensitive to a lot of traffic. What else over here you think might be affected if people started trampling through?
Trees.
The trees, the plants.
Like how the stuff grows on the edge.
Yeah.
Like all this would be cleared out.
You're right. The water as well. So if we stomp this up and get it super muddy and get all that dirt and stuff up in the water, and then it carries down, where's that eventually going to end up?
In the good water.
It's going to end up down there in the creek. Now that's a concept I want you guys to keep in your head, okay? We're going to learn a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes.
Welcome, welcome. Have you guys all been here before?
No.
Let me see a show of hands. How many have? So today we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to start by talking about water. Anybody know how much of the earth is covered by water? 75%. So this is the earth. Most of the earth is covered with water. How much of it's fresh water that we could drink?
25.
Who said 3? 25. Every American uses between 80 and 100 gallons of water a day. Okay, that's one of those big milk jugs.
Yeah.
80 to 100 a day. So how do you guys drink that much?
No.
But how else are you using that water?
You're taking showers.
Showers,
Washing your hands.
hands, cars,
Feeding plants. Feeding your animals.
feeding watering your lawn, doing all those things. Okay, so yeah, one other thing you do a lot of, you flush your toilet, right? That uses a lot of water when you think about it. So if we're using that much water, where does it all go when we're done using it? So you're right, that's where we want it to end up, is in the ground, back in our groundwater, right? But sometimes, a lot of it, like let's say you use it, you flush your toilet, it goes back through the whole system, all the pipes, maybe it goes back to the sewer, gets cleaned up as best we can clean it up. And what happens to some of it? It goes the opposite direction. Yeah, what do we call that?
Evaporation.
Right, okay? So I want you to think about this. If you were a drop of rain, one drop, and you landed close to the edge of this, where do you think you would go next?
There.
Down where?
In the ground.
What's that? Oh, in the ground. And then you keep going and you keep going.
Until they hit a cave.
What is this river? Oh, maybe a cave. You might flow into a cave and then come out. What is this one right down here called? This is yours. This is your river. What do you guys call this?
Tennessee River?
No, not quite.
Grundy County.
Close. We call it the big Fire Gizzard. Fire Gizzard. From there, it keeps going, and it gets to a river called Battle Creek River. Now you guys can help me out. Battle Creek River flows into Tennessee. Where does the Tennessee? Ohio, right? Exactly. You know that because it's a sports team. Yeah. Okay. So it goes Battle Creek, then it goes Tennessee, then it goes Ohio, then it goes Mississippi, and where does it come out? Gulf of Mexico. Now the thing though that makes that important is because all along the way, other people are taking that water and drinking it, right? Okay, they're treating it, but they are drinking it. We've also got bugs and animals that are using it. What do you think the people are doing along the way in addition? Yeah, I'm thinking, what are they doing with the water? Drinking it. They're doing something else. Fishing, and then what are they doing with the fish?
Eating.
Right. So when you, and what are the kids doing on summers? What are the kids doing? Swimming, right? That's what you guys can come here and do in summer. They're great swimming holes. Oh, John will show you the swimming holes. Great swimming holes. Okay? Now, the problem is if we don't keep it clean, all those things suffer downstream from us. In some ways, you guys are really fortunate because you're at what they call the headwaters. A lot of it starts here. So a lot of the pollutants and things that you might see get into it further down, they're not up here. But we have other things going on. What do you think is polluting our water here?
Trash.
Trash?
Bugs.
Yeah, why do you say bugs? What do you think?
Was it like eggs in it?
Because there's bugs here.
We're actually going to show you how the bugs can be beneficial to the water.
Dragonflies and mosquitoes lay their eggs.
They do. I'm thinking true pollutants, things like you would hear like chemicals. What about if you are working in your driveway and you're changing the oil in your car and it rains really hard?
No, it makes the oil will run into the water and the water will run to the sewers. Right, exactly. So you can start with something that's changing the oil on your car, it running off your driveway, it ending up in a ditch, the ditch goes into a little river, the river drops into, and it goes all the way downstream. This whole area up here that feeds into our little creek is called a watershed. Have you heard that word before? No. Anybody? All right, how many people take showers? Showers. Anybody take a bath? I take a little bit of everything.
Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think you're in the shower, okay? I'm thinking you're in the shower. The water's hitting you, right? But it's also hitting that shower curtain and the door, and maybe it's hitting the sides down here. And all that water collects where? In the drain, in the bottom of maybe your tub or the bottom of your shower. And then it sort of forms like a little river and goes right down to the drain, right? All the places where that water hits and then runs into the drain is your watershed. That is your shower's watershed. So I want you to think about this area when it rains and all the hills and everything up high that it hits, how it drains down into that river. That's your watershed. It's not the water itself, it's the land that it drains, okay? Now, we talked about maybe changing your oil, we talked about trash as a pollutant. How about farming? What if you put pesticides on your...
Or bug repellent.
Or bug repellent, right?
Yeah, when it rains, it washes it off and flows into the rivers.
And it flows into the rivers, right? How about if you cut down a forest completely, don't leave anything, and what you get is a bunch of loose dirt? What happens the next time it rains?
It pushes
all flows into the river.
You know what that stuff is called when the dirt mixes with mud? There's another more technical. It's called sediment, okay? And that is the #1 pollutant in Tennessee. Now, if you go down here today with John, how are you going to know if the water is clean or dirty?
Drink it.
Look at it. Now, if it's not good and you drank it, you might be in a little bit of trouble, right? So you probably don't want to drink it without knowing first. How else? You might look. Smell it, right? Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of different ways that scientists can tell us if our water is good. They can measure it for oxygen. Microscopes, you could look under it and see if there's some bad things living in it, right? There are all different ways that scientists can do that, but there's a really easy way you guys can do it, okay? See if it's moving, see if there are bugs in it, but we're looking for certain kinds of bugs. There are certain bugs that live in the water when the water is clean. Okay, and those are the bugs we want to find. There are other bugs that live in the water when it's not so clean. And there are still other bugs, like worms, that live in really bad water, even when it's polluted and you wouldn't want to drink it.
Even leeches?
Leeches is one of the ones that lives in the bad water. Exactly. So if you get into the, thank you. Okay, you can tell them about the nerdies and the.
Here we got some bugs here. So if you got really good moving water, you got these, if you got really good quality water, you got these bugs that are sensitive bugs. So they can only handle so much pollutants and stuff. So if you don't find these guys in your stream, you might have a little bad water, but there's a different kind. You got some kind of good water. Then you got these more tolerant bugs right here. So anybody know what these guys are?
Somebody said it earlier.
Yeah.
Larvae, right? Or nymphs. Nymphs. Before they look like the ones that fly, they look like this.
And these guys
And they live in the water.
survive in the kind of good water. So can these guys. I bet y'all seen, or maybe even caught some of these guys, right? Maybe some of these, seen those.
Yeah.
What is that?
Crawfish.
Crawfish, yeah.
I want you guys to take a really close look at that
Look at this
picture.
one right
Look at
here.
the picture first and
See them there?
really close look because there's a
See
clue.
what side his opening is on?
It's a different.
Okay, now look at this bug.
It's a different
There's
type.
sea slugs.
See what side his opening
They're
is
snails.
on?
They're different types of snails.
Yeah, they're two
Okay.
different types.
They're different types. But which one, the one that's good, look at this. It looks like an ice cream cone kind of, huh? But the opening is here on the right, okay? That snail uses a gill just like a fish to breathe, which means he has to filter the water. If the water isn't pure, that snail won't live there. Flip it over. This snail,
It's on the left.
it's on the left. He doesn't filter the water. He just breathes air. So he doesn't care really what the water's like. He's concerned about what the air is.
I'm like this up or like that down.
This guy can stay down in the water a little longer because he can filter the good water. That's good, doesn't have a lot of pollutants and stuff.
So what we had planned for you guys to do originally was we were going to put you in the creek.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, but it rained really, really hard Sunday night and the water went way up. And it did a couple of things. It pushed a lot of these things that are just now starting to hatch. It kind of pushed them downstream so they're harder to find because the water was so rough. And the water was almost too rough really for us to get in. So we're saying, okay, can't do that. We have caught a couple that we're going to show you in a minute. Then we're going to let you look in this little pond, okay? Now this is a still pond. I can tell you, Ryan and I looked at it and right off we said, probably not going to find the good stuff in here just because there's not a lot of movement in it, right? And then we're also going to look at some insects. And the reason we're looking at insects is if you look at all of these on Ryan's chart here, what makes an insect an insect?
It has 6 legs.
You were the first group to get that. What else does he have typically?
Antenna.
2 antennae, 6 legs. What else?
Wings.
Head. You are so good. Thorax, abdomen, 3 parts to his body.
3.
And then most older bugs have these things back. Wings.
Oh, yeah.
Wings, right? So we're going to look at the water bugs we're going to look at. Here's what I want you to remember when you look at them. They're the dragonflies and they're the beetles and they're all the things you guys see as bugs, but they start out as nymphs and they don't have those wings and they look really, really different, okay? So we're going to divide up now. Ryan's going to take half, I'm going to take half. We're going to look at the water bugs. You can look at the insects if you would like, and then we're going to divide up and we want you guys to kind of comb through the woods. We've got some nets here and things, or you can dip in the water and see what you can find. Okay? All right, can everybody see in the bucket?
Yeah.
All right, so what do you see to start with?
Crawfish.
Crawfish. Okay, let's start this way. These are all invertebrates. What's an invertebrate? Backbone. Invertebrates means they don't have any. All right, these are his pinchers, right? Where's his skeleton?
He doesn't have one. It's an exoskeleton.
It's an which means his shell is his skeleton, right? Which is why he's related to like a crab and a lobster, okay? Now this guy moves really slow. He looks dead. He is not dead. He is alive. Just be very, see he moves a little. I want you to look at this. This is the nymph of a dragonfly. This guy will go through another change. If you want to, when we're finished here, go look in Ryan's bucket. He's got the next bigger version after the guy actually changed. And then he's going to change again, and he's going to get his wings as an adult insect, and he's going to fly away and lay eggs. Okay, this one I love. He looks vicious. Put your hand out over the bucket, so if he does jump off. This is going to grow up to be a beetle. This is a beetle larva. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You want to? Okay, keep your hand over here and just kind of move it forward.
in a way.
It does a little, but you can see now he's got how many legs?
6.
See him up the top there?
Yeah.
He's got his head, his thorax, his abdomen. So what questions do you guys have?
Aren't those little ones that look like tadpoles mosquito larvae?
They are. They absolutely, which is another way of saying this doesn't look anything like a mosquito, does it?
No, it turns into one.
It turns into one. It grows a little bit as a nymph like that, and then eventually he'll grow so big, and when he comes out, he'll get his wings. So yeah, so this guy, thank you for asking. Here's our crawdad. He's on our kind of good chart, right? There's our dragonfly. He's on our kind of good. I don't think we have today anybody up here, but yesterday we did have a mayfly. We had this guy.
And there's mosquitoes.
And mosquitoes, yep.
You guys want to know something cool about crawdads? How long do you think they can live outside of the water?
Long time.
Pretty long time, but you know how?
They have gills?
They've got gills, but do you see gills on the outside?
No, they're on the inside.
Their gills are on the inside.
They have lungs on the outside.
Well, what they'll do is they keep some of that water inside them,
And they funnel it.
and they can just kind of swish it around, and then their gills can
Wow.
get oxygen from the water that they've kind of stored in their body, and they can survive out of the water for a couple hours.
I did not know that. That is a cool fact.
They're fast. It's
That is a cool.
Salt me with your neck. Dylan screamed out. That's okay. I'm going over here.
I'll be careful there, don't fall in.
It's sharp.
Bill, why don't you just use your bare
And those little nets like you got right there, they're good at finding all those mosquito larvae back in there.
I tried. It didn't work.
There it goes. Yeah, keep it off in the water. I figured maybe something would be there. No, I did see a frog.
Anybody?
Here.
I
You don't like frogs?
I love frogs.
Ants and ladybugs?
So this guy was eating my vegetables, or at least sitting on them yesterday. So I said, well, if you're going to do that, here we go.
She said it was.
Big guy too. Look at him.
Now,
That's huge.
isn't that huge? Now this is a moth, okay? And I don't know, right? So here's the thing, Ryan and I want to know, is it important to keep your water clean?
Yeah.
Not do things like put oil in it, throw trash in it, right? Right? So as you walk with Ranger John, I want you guys to think today what you can do to keep the big fiery gizzard clean.
A pioneer and a scout and a frontiersman, one of their main jobs was to take people out in the woods and teach them about the woods. So if I was to ask you guys to say, if I said, hey, tomorrow we're gonna take a walk, and we're gonna walk to North Carolina. Y'all think you could do that? No. We're just gonna take one backpack and start walking. You think we can get there okay? How long do you think it'd take? 3 or 4 weeks maybe, something like that. Think you'd be tired when you got there? Yeah. Be pretty rough. Well, one of the things that pioneers and frontiersmen and scouts also did is they would come into an area and they would help people out. Because a lot of times in the old days, people would move to an area trying to get a better life, but they didn't necessarily have the skills that they needed once they got there. Davy Crockett came into an area where there was a community that had done just that. They moved into the frontier wanting a better life, but they really didn't know how to take care of themselves. So he killed 105 bears and fed the whole community for a pretty good period of time. So what I want y'all to understand today, and I'm going to mention this a few times, and I'm going to ask you a lot more questions here, but when you're out here in the woods, the more you learn about it and the more you understand about it, the less you need to bring with you. As a pioneer, if you were to get out here in the woods and you did get lost, you got turned around, what could you eat? Plants, right? We can eat plants. Well, I picked a few plants today. Pass this around, everybody grab a leaf. I'll tell you here in just a minute, because one of these plants is deadly poisonous. I want to make sure I have the right one. So, does anybody know what that plant is just by looking at it? I have no idea. All right, so you guys don't really know what that leaf is, right? All right, so if you're in the woods by yourself and you see a leaf or something that you're thinking about eating, but you don't know what it is, should you eat it? No, you should not eat it, right? It might make you sick, might make it worse.
I like sour grass.
I know what this leaf is. This leaf, go ahead and take a bite of it. Chew it up. Have at it.
That's the worst part.
You can chew this, you can eat it, you can swallow it. Every bit of it.
It's sour.
How many people think it tastes like a green apple?
Green apple.
A green apple. There we go. Is it a little bit sour?
Yeah.
This leaf is called a sourwood. This tree that it came from is called a sourwood. It's not poisonous. Not poisonous. So we can eat those leaves. That's a plant that we can eat out in nature, right? Besides eating plants, is there something else plants can do for us?
Heal us.
Medicines, right? Medicines. I'm glad you said that. All right, so I've got 2 plants here, and y'all may have seen this one already today if you walked by the creek at all. I'm going to give you a clue as to what the name is. This is yellow root. Okay? Now yellow root, if you look at the end of my finger right now, it's yellow. This is one that pioneers learned from the Native Americans. All right? This was used as a dye, and it was also used as a medicine. Raise your hand if you've ever had diarrhea.
Oh yeah.
All right, okay, every one of us, right? One of the things that yellow root cures is diarrhea. It helps your throat, it helps sores in your mouth, it helps your entire intestine tract, I can't even say the word, and your stomach. What's that? This is one you don't want to eat. It is some of the nastiest tasting stuff you've ever had in your life. It is bad. But you can eat it. You can chew on it. A lot of people chew on it. But what you're going to do, guys, you're going to cut this up and boil the roots and turn it into a tea. And I'm telling you, it's nasty. You don't want to drink it, but it will help you when you do it. When you do drink it. Now, in the old days, pioneers used to think you could take your cup, walk down to the river, scoop up some water, and drink it.
No, you have to boil it first.
Why do we have to boil it?
Because the water will be nasty and stuff, so you have to boil it to make it clean.
What do you mean by nasty and stuff? What's in it?
It will have bugs and
Microorganisms. Nowadays there could be toxins, all kinds of stuff in it, right? So we know nowadays we can't do that. But back in the day, they didn't know that, so they would use stuff like yellow root to cure their problems. As people understood plants and animals a little bit more, farmers started watching their pigs and their cows. And every once in a while, their pigs and cows would get real skinny and they'd keel over and just die. And they couldn't figure out why. So over time, eventually people started looking inside the animal. What's going on here? Why are these pigs and cows dying like this? And they found their stomachs were completely full of worms. This is mountain laurel. And we also have another plant called rhododendron that looks very similar and acts the same way. It's also poisonous. But what farmers found out later on, because the one person got sick from it, what they did is they took the leaf of these plants and fed them to their animals. All right. Now, why would you feed a poison to your animals?
To make it throw up, so worms. They don't work the same.
It would kill the worms in their belly. If they fed them just enough to kill those worms, that was a good thing. The animal was still alive. But if they occasionally fed them too much, their animal would still keel over and die, right? So it was all about understanding medicine. They were trying to learn and figure out how we could do things like that. So, all right, so besides eating plants and medicines, what else are plants used for? We could use it to cook our fire, right? We can get firewood and cook fire. If you look at me, am I wearing any plants today?
Yes. You're wearing fibers of them.
Fibers of plants, right? Do you know which part of my clothing is plants?
Your shirt thing.
My frock, right? My frock and my pants right here. Have y'all ever heard of the name of the plant called flax?
Yeah.
Okay. Flax seeds, you basically smash them, beat the tar out of them, soak them, all kinds of stuff, and eventually you get to fiber and you can make linen. This is called linen. All right. So plants made these clothing. How about the rest of me? Do you see anything else on me?
Leather.
Leather. Where's leather come from? Cows. Are there any leather-bearing animals out in the wilderness?
Yeah, sort of. Wild horses. Deer.
Deer's a big one, right? Horses are one. What else? I'm sorry? Boars. Pretty much any mammal, right? Any mammal is going to give us a thick skin or a leather, right? Okay. So what else can I use mammals for? Animals. Food, right? Right. So out here in the wilderness, what kind of animals can you expect to see out here?
Boars.
Boars. You think pigs are out here?
Fox.
Fox.
Maybe deer and rabbit.
Deer, rabbit.
Otter.
How about birds? Turkey.
Yeah.
Snakes.
I got turkey eggs.
Turkey eggs. Can you eat snakes?
Yeah.
You can eat snakes. How about all the animals we just mentioned? Can you eat those? I got asked about this one yesterday. How about earthworms?
Yeah. You can eat them brown. You can eat them raw.
You can eat them, right? They actually say earthworms are better for you than steak is.
I love it.
Believe that?
And it's extra.
How about a big old grub as big around as your thumb?
Yeah.
You can eat that, but what else can you do with that? Bait, right? We can go fishing. Now, if I'm out here, I'm only carrying a little pack, right? Do I want to carry a fishing pole everywhere with me?
No.
There's my fishing pole. Where are you going to get a stick from in the woods, right? They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Do you need to carry a stick with you?
Here's a stick.
There you go. So all you need is a little bit of fishing line, a fishing hook, and some people like to carry a bobber, right? Can you eat turtles?
Yeah.
You can eat turtles, right? This is a flint rock. How many of y'all play Minecraft? Or have played Minecraft? A few of you?
I have
Okay.
Minecraft in my pocket.
So how do you start a fire in Minecraft?
You get flint and steel and you roll it. You just light it.
Flint and steel. So which one is flint and which one's steel?
That one's steel and that one's steel.
Okay. So what is flint?
A piece of rock. It's a rock.
It's a piece of rock, right? So rocks can help us while we're in nature too, right? Do we have flint in Tennessee?
Yeah.
All over the place. All over the place. And we also have another rock called chert. And chert also sparks when it hits steel. All over Tennessee. So all we need is some kind of piece of steel when we're out in the wilderness, and we can start a fire with flint and steel. Now, one important thing with starting fires, if you're lost in the woods, you don't know how long you're going to be out there, when you get a fire started, the first thing you should be worried about is your next fire, okay? Because what happens if after you start this fire, it just starts pouring down rain? It's going to put it out, everything gets wet, it's real difficult to start your next fire. But if you take the time, and if you have something where you can waterproof something, maybe a tin or maybe like a sandwich baggie, whatever you have with you, if you just take some dry leaf material, pine needles, whatever you can find, stick it somewhere where it's dried out. If you have a fire going that's in the rain, you have a fire going. So dry something out real quick. Take the time to dry it out and then put it away for your next fire. So pioneers had to learn that skill. They had to learn how to start different ways to start fires, but they also needed to prepare and be ready for the next time. So every time they would go out in the woods, hopefully they could carry less and less on their trip. If you were walking 100 miles, would you want to carry an 80-pound pack or would you want to carry a 5-pound pack? 5 pounds, right? Because you want to be able to move and be light. So we've talked about plants, we've talked about some animals, we've even talked about rocks. If you were a pioneer or a scout or a frontiersman, you may bump into somebody out in the woods. Maybe a Native American, maybe just another pioneer, somebody. But another option that you had, you could possibly trade. So if I came up on a Native American, I could say, you know, I have something that I think you guys use all the time. I found this out in the woods. Would you trade this to me for like an apple? I'm hungry. I'm hungry. So what can you do with this?
Make a knife out of it.
A knife or a knife handle, right? Right. Okay. Some people can make fishing hooks out of these. I do have one right there on my side. Fishing hooks, sewing needles can be made with the ends of the antlers, all kinds of stuff. Arrow tips, right. So this might be valuable to somebody else. Now, maybe they just want something they've never seen before. So maybe a Native American's never seen a comb when they're out in the woods for, you know, in pioneer times. Maybe not a wooden bowl that's been carved out. So little trinkets might go a long way. You might be able to trade if you have skills speaking to people. Yes, sir.
Some Native Americans use the end of a deer horn and flint. That's how they make the arrowheads.
Right, to nap them off, right? Yep. I may or may not bring soap with me if I was a pioneer. Just depends on who you are. Some people might go 2 or 3 months without taking a bath, right? If you're passing through, you might swim across under a waterfall. You might just take a dip every once in a while, something like that. But also, you have to think about when you're hunting, do you want to smell more natural or do you want to smell like the soap? A lot of animals can smell you, right? Let's say we have a rabbit and we have a deer. How are we going to catch those animals to eat them? We can trap animals, we can shoot them, right? This gun here, this is a pioneer style gun. This is called a flintlock rifle or a long rifle. You understand why it's called a long rifle?
Oh yeah.
Right, pretty tall. All right, so jumping back to Minecraft and the flint and steel. If you look right here, we have a piece of flint. Right here, we have a piece of steel called the frizzen. All right, so the flint hits the steel when I pull the trigger. This is called a muzzle loader because you load it through the muzzle, right? This is where you pour your powder. All right, so we want to keep our gunpowder dry all the time, right? So I might use a, can you pick that horn up for me there? There you go. That's a powder horn. It's waterproof, right? So I can put my powder in there, walk around in the woods and get rained on and not have to worry about my powder getting wet. What happens if it gets wet? Doesn't work, it's worthless, right? Right here, there's a little carved out area called a pan, okay? And this is where I'm gonna put a little bit of powder in here. Go ahead and do that real quick. All right, I'm gonna put a little bit of powder in there. When the flint hits the steel, it's gonna make a spark. That spark's gonna hit the gunpowder, and the gunpowder is gonna make a small explosion. It's gonna burn really quickly. In the side of the barrel, there's a hole called a vent, and that fire is gonna go through that hole into the barrel where I've put more gunpowder. That gunpowder is gonna make a second explosion and shoot the bullet out of the muzzle, out of the gun, right? So we're gonna shoot it in just a second, okay? Now, just me, all right? So I've put powder in the pan, so now I need to put some in the barrel, right? Now the next thing we would do is we would take a piece of cloth, all right? Because we wanna make compression in there. So what I would do is I would take my knife and I would make a little cut into a square, all right? And I would put that up here, take a lead ball, put it on top, pull out my ramrod, and I'd ram everything down the barrel. Okay. Normally I would ram everything right down the barrel, push it all together. And what I've done is like I've made a modern bullet, okay? Now I'm not gonna put the ramrod in there, I'm just gonna shoot powder today. I'm not gonna shoot a ball out at anything. It's still gonna make a bang. With this cloth, I've got 2 pieces here, and this is one that I've been using because it's easy to use. With this fabric, I can blow right through it. So if I'm trying to make compression, there's a problem, right? It's not gonna hold in the air that I need to force it out of there. So what can I do to this cloth?
Double it up.
Well, if I double it up, then it might be too thick to go down the barrel. So what else can I do? Wet it, there you go. All right, so now guys, all right, we're gonna fire this gun off, but I want everybody to kind of back up from over in this area. How many explosions did I tell you this gun was going to do? We get the first explosion, and then it sets off that second one. Now, they are explosions, but sometimes they're very close together. Sometimes they'll be 3 or 4 seconds in between the explosions. But always, powder is shot this way. The other thing about these guns is a lot of times they fail. It's very easy for the flint to break, or they just don't function correctly. They get dirty really fast. All right, so we'll give it a shot. All right, count of 3. Firing! All right. So did you hear 2 explosions or 1? It was very quick, very quick. Now, one of the things John did the other day, and I didn't even know he did it at the time, but will you show him, John? If he's going to show you on his phone a really slow motion video of what I just did, and you'll see 2 very distinct explosions that come out of here. Biggest thing today, I mean, we've talked about just really quickly plants, animals, rocks, things that are out here that can help us, and we've talked a little bit about pioneers, but the biggest thing I just want you to understand is these pioneers, they didn't know as much as we do now, but they still contributed, and those rules are still used today. We need to go out and explore. We need to do it safely. We need to try to understand what's out there in the woods, right? And like I said, the more we understand, the less we have to worry about once we get out there.
Most of the top layers of the Cumberland Plateau are sandstone. So what happens when sandstone gets eroded and weathers? It turns into sand, right? It's all in the soil up here because of all the sandstone. It's everywhere. So do you remember the beginning of your conversation up there with Miss Deb and Ryan? What were they talking about?
Bugs. How the water can be cleaner.
Okay, what did they talk about before that? They talked about where all the water goes, right?
Yeah.
So all the rain that falls on this hill, where does it end up?
Down here.
It ends up right there. Where does this creek end up? The Big Fire Gizzard Creek flows into Battle Creek. That goes into the Tennessee. And then the Tennessee goes into the Ohio, and then the Ohio goes to the, and that goes to the Gulf of Mexico, right? So, think about it like this. If there were no obstacles, no dams or anything crazy like that, in between here and the end of that journey, you could sit in a boat
And just float.
and start right here, and eventually you would end up in the ocean without ever getting out of the water. Now you can't actually do that because there's things like dams and places where the streams might get shallow or something like that. But what we want you to understand is eventually all this water is going to make it out to the ocean. All of it's eventually going there. So any pollution that gets dumped in here is going to be spread from right here all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. That's a pretty long way, right? So some bad thing that can happen here can affect a lot of other stuff. So y'all just remember that it's all connected. And if one place gets hurt or damaged or polluted, it's going to affect other places. It's not isolated. Those 3 letters, CCC, what do they stand for? CCC stands for Civilian Conservation Corps. Everybody close your eyes for a second. We're gonna go back in time. We're gonna go back in time to the year 1933. Okay, open your eyes. It's 1933. What is going on in America? The Great Depression. Now, can someone raise their hand and tell me what the Great Depression was? Like what was happening? Yes, ma'am. Basically, nobody had any money. Very few people had jobs. Our government wanted to try to fix that. One of the ways that they thought they could fix that was by creating a bunch of new organizations and agencies to help give people jobs. One of those agencies that was created was the Civilian Conservation Corps. The mission of the CCC is in the name. What is conservation? Somebody raise your hand. Tell me what it means to conserve. Yes, sir.
Like you use less of something to have more for a longer time.
Okay, that's a great way to put it.
You save it.
Save it. Both great answers. So conservation is protecting something, saving something. There was a CCC camp right here. That building is the foundation from one of the buildings that they had here. And what those guys worked on were things like building trail. Guess what? The trail that we've been walking on, the trail that you're going to walk on after lunch, was built over 80 years ago by the CCC. It was built by young men aged 18 to 28. The legacy, really, of that organization was they built parks. This park right here, this whole area, was started by the CCC. Now here's another thing. What's the best part about having a job?
You get paid.
Dollar bills, right? Right? You get money. Now, how much money do you think these guys made a week?
$1. A penny.
More than $1, a little more than 10.
$2. $11.
Some good guesses.
12.
30 bucks. They got 30 bucks a week. Now, in the 1930s, $30 was a lot of money.
Yeah, you'd be rich.
That went a lot farther than it does today. But here's the catch. These guys, they only got to keep 5 of it.
25 went to the company.
Well, 25 was sent home to their families. That's still good, right? Why is that good?
Because at least they're getting money.
Because their family gets to take care of themselves.
Right, so now their families who maybe are having a hard time getting a job, they've got a little bit of money and they can afford to feed the family, because guess what? These guys didn't really need all that money. They had a free place to live. They had free food, 3 square meals a day. They had health care. There were doctors in these camps. And guess what? They even got an education. So a lot of these men, they only graduated from 8th grade. That's as far as it went. So while they were in these camps, at the end of the day, after they were done working, they would have class. And in that class, they would learn things like carpentry skills, basic math, science, English, all the things that you guys are learning. And they got the opportunity to get that for free. And then when they got out of the program, they were able to go out into the world with all these new skills and find jobs. So this program, the CCC, was a huge benefit to our country. We're benefiting from it right now. We've had a trail to walk on today. There's a park here because of those guys. When we get back to the parking lot, what I'd like for you to do, in the middle, in between where the cars are parked, across from the bathrooms, you'll see a big stone pillar. On that pillar is a bunch of information about the CCC and specifically about the camp that was right here. Some of y'all probably have relatives that worked at this camp. You probably had a great-grandfather that worked over here. Yeah. I don't know, maybe go home and ask. I'll bet your parents know.
My name is Randy Hedgepath. I'm the state naturalist for Tennessee State Parks. I work all over Tennessee. And I got to come down to stay with you guys this week. I'm so glad. I love it around here. I used to be a ranger here a long time ago. So, I'm going to lead you down the trail. I know all the trees by name. I can introduce you.
What's your name?
And I know the birds too. Down there, Fiery Gizzard Creek. You might be wondering, like the first group, what kind of name is that? Why do they call it Fiery Gizzard?
There's different kinds of stories.
Tell me. So the summary is, David Crockett got hungry, threw a turkey gizzard in his mouth before he thought, burned his mouth, spit it out, saying, dang, that's a fiery gizzard. Or it might have been Indians trying to calm down the settlers so they could have a peace conference, slicing up a turkey and throwing its innards in the fire. Or it might have been that iron furnace that was built in 1873 in Tracy City, called the Fiery Gizzard because it had fire in it, melting iron, and the creek was named after that. Or not.
because there was a map showing Fiery Gizzard Creek 50 years before the furnace was built. So dating back to Indian days, maybe. Or maybe it's because they used to have guys that went down in there to make a beverage that was pretty fiery on your gizzard. Or going down in here is like being swallowed by a giant turkey. And what does a turkey have in its innards, in its gizzard, to grind you up with?
Fire.
Rocks. So we're going to be swallowed here, and by the time you get back out, you may feel partially digested. Now, we're going to go down. We're going to be right underneath the very rock we're standing on now. Just a minute. Yes, we are.
So my name is Josh. I'm a park ranger at Old Stone Fort State Park in Manchester. How many of y'all have been there? The Native Americans 2,000 years ago built massive walls almost going around this giant field. And it was a special place for them. It was a ceremonial site. It was kind of like going to a church for them. So if you can imagine, Native Americans lived right here where we are 2,000 years ago. And everything that they had came from these woods and came from this rock shelter and came from this creek. So, do you think you could live 2,000 years ago?
No. Yeah.
It might take you a while to learn.
Yeah. Nah. But I think
so let's talk about one of the most essential things. Y'all said food, right? Yeah. Where are you going to get food out here?
Like berries, animals.
Animals, berries. So yeah. So say we're going to hunt a white-tailed deer. What do we need to do to hunt that deer? Spear's good? A bow and arrow. So what goes on, what's one of the most important parts of the bow and arrow that's at the very end?
The
arrowhead, right? Have y'all found arrowheads before out in the woods?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so maybe they look like this?
Yeah.
So what is this made out of? So she said flint. So we say flint or chert. Now when you find that flint or chert, naturally it sometimes looks like this.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah. Well, how in the world do you turn this into this?
Carve it. You gotta carve it out.
Carve it, bust it. So do you think that's hard to do?
Yeah.
I got an axe or
Do you need special tools, you think, to do this?
Yeah.
All right, so what would you think you would need?
A deer antler.
An axe could work.
Deer antler.
An antler would be a good one. So if I'm going to start smashing this rock, trying to shape it, you can use different tools. You could use another rock, or you could use an antler. Why would you use an antler?
Because it's got that point which you get into sharp.
It's got a point on it, and it's not as hard as a rock. So when I break it, the rock will break exactly where I want it to, and it won't damage the rest of it. Does that make sense? Because if y'all took two rocks and just smashed them together, what happens? It just shatters, right? So, if I started with this, and I'm trying to make this, how long do you think that would take?
an hour.
That's a pretty good guess. How long did y'all have for lunch?
About an hour. 20
So, if you've been doing this your whole life, and this is what you depended on for survival, you could probably turn this rock into this in about 30 minutes. That's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
That takes skill. Look at that. Look how thin it is. Look how pointed it is. That's difficult. Now the rock, the chert, is good because when it breaks, it'll give you these sharp edges. Why do you need sharp edges? To use it as a knife or to cut things. So I'll pass this one around. The edges aren't that sharp, but you can kind of get an idea for how sharp it could be if you wanted it to be. Here you go, bud. What's the next thing we need?
A stick.
A stick. Where are we going to find that? Do y'all see anything around here that would work?
There's the trees.
So maybe one of those small trees? That could be the shaft of your arrow, right? Yeah?
Or spear.
So say we cut one of those down. Well, how in the world do we attach the arrowhead to the shaft? Where are you going to get string?
From plants. Flax.
Fibers from plants. Or they would take it from animals they hunted. So if you've ever seen a deer skin or an animal skin, there's tendons and all sorts of other stuff that you might not eat. Well, the Native Americans figured out you could cut some of those tendons and different things into little strips and wrap it and wrap it and wrap it, and it's like a glue when it dries. So we call that sinew. This isn't real sinew. This is sinew. This is fake sinew. It looks just like the real thing, feels just like the real thing, but it isn't a real animal part. Do y'all want to feel what it feels like?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's from me earlier.
Landon handed it to me.
All right, so we've made our arrowhead and our arrow. What do we need now to make?
A bow on the back.
A bow, right?
Yeah, we need a stick and string.
Where are we going to get a bow? So we get us a bigger tree, we bend it, and we need our string. Where are we going to get that string again?
From the animals or plant.
That's right. So there's all sorts of things in nature that if you cut into little strips and braid it and weave it, it'll become strong. So this is natural string. We made this from stuff found in the woods. It's rope pretty much. Y'all feel how strong it is. Don't pull real hard, but you can feel that's pretty tough. So that could be the string for your bow. So now, we've made our bow, we got our arrow, we're gonna go hunt us a deer, right? So what happens after we shoot that deer?
You get a knife.
We gotta clean it, right? And skin it. Where are we getting our skinning knife?
Out of it. You can get
That's right.
an arrowhead and a stick.
So you might use a bigger arrowhead to do it, right?
Yeah, and then you can also use an apple.
Now, we'll talk a little bit about trading stuff here in a little bit, but y'all trade stuff, right?
Yeah.
So Native Americans thousands of years ago traded too. Some stuff that was really valuable to Native Americans here, they couldn't find. They had to trade for. One thing that they would have really liked to have had was this. Y'all know what this is?
Obsidian.
How do y'all know it's obsidian? Buzz of Minecraft, that's right.
Yeah, it looks like obsidian.
So what does obsidian do in Minecraft?
It makes the strongest material.
So in real life, you know why obsidian's important?
You can make fire.
That's a good guess. It's super sharp.
Yeah.
So that rock y'all just felt was kind of sharp. Obsidian, I broke this piece off. And the edge of it is sharp, could be sharp enough that I could cut your hair. Doctors still use obsidian for surgery because the edge of it can be so sharp. Now I've shaved this down a little bit so it's not as sharp as it can be. But take your finger and just go like this, real gently, real soft, and it'll feel like, wow, that could be a sharp blade. So we clean our deer, right? And we cut us a big deer steak. What do we need now to cook it?
Fire.
Where are we going to get fire? Yep. Flint, they didn't have steel, but they did have wood. Now what happens when you rub your hands together like this? What's it called? Friction. So they figured out if you take two pieces of wood and rub them together, you can make a fire. Then the Native Americans figured out something called a pump drill. Y'all see how that spins? Y'all see how fast that's spinning? So maybe if I did that for about 15 minutes, it'll catch on fire. So you make your fire and you cook your deer. And say you've got some stuff left over you want to save. Do y'all see anything up here that could be used to store stuff?
The basket, the weave basket.
So did they go to Walmart and get the basket?
No, and they traded it.
Do you think that took a long time to make?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or they traded for it.
Or they traded for it. Here you go. So they also made stuff from some of the materials around us to store stuff. Clay. So what do you need to make the clay hard?
Fire.
Your fire, right?
Yeah.
So this would be a small pot for storage. But see, Native Americans, y'all have art class, right?
Yeah.
They did art too. And in this bowl, they made kind of a design on it. Do y'all see what's supposed to be represented on this?
Turtle.
A turtle's a good guess. Look at the clues.
Fire.
Look what's in its mouth and look at its tail. A beaver. So this is a beaver bowl. That's pretty neat, isn't it?
Yeah.
This would have been something that probably took a little bit of time, right?
Yeah.
All right, if y'all pass it around, please don't drop it. So we talked about trading, right? They traded other things. Watch what happens when I scratch on this rock.
It's sand rock. It's sandstone.
It's not sandstone, it's a good guess. This is called soapstone. Now to Native Americans, why would this be valuable?
Because you could use it to make powder. Make soap? I don't know. Powder.
Or you could just carve things in it, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You could carve out jewelry or decoration stuff. Now why are they called soapstone? It feels like soap. Y'all feel it and pass it around. Feel how soft it feels. All right, do y'all know what an archaeologist is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so archaeologist is like a scientist who digs in the dirt looking for clues from history to figure out stuff. So what if I told y'all an archaeologist came out here and he dug a foot down and found this underneath this rock shelter? So but where is this supposed to be found at?
The ocean.
So how did it end up here? They traded. So archaeologists have to deal with all sorts of confusing things like that, because you wouldn't expect to dig out the dirt here and find a big shell, would you?
Yeah.
Now, Native Americans would have done what with it? This one doesn't work very well anymore to blow in, but imagine you lived in Grundy Forest your whole life. You never went anywhere else, and somebody brought this to you. That'd be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, blow in it.
Yeah. All right, y'all pass it around. No, we didn't. So say we've traded, we've cooked our deer, and we're getting ready to go to sleep. We need what to stay warm?
Fire.
How are we going to cut down wood to have fires?
Or the night.
So you think this would work?
Yeah. It can make something.
What if I did that?
You have to have string though.
So this stone here, do you find a rock that looks like this in the creek?
No.
Well, how in the world do you shape a rock to look like this? So friction comes in again. So this type of stone could be polished and sanded, kind of like sandpaper on wood. And after a lot of rubbing, you could shape it. Now, do you think that took a long time? Took a really long time. Y'all pass that around and feel how smooth it is. So do y'all think you could survive 2,000 years ago?
Yeah. Would be okay.
So when you think about the Native Americans that lived here now, y'all probably didn't realize they had so much art and so much fine skills, did y'all?
Yeah.
It took a long time to figure those things out, and they lived in this woods for thousands of years just off what's out here, and that's pretty incredible.
That means she will be in front of you, but I'm going to come
All right, we're going to measure the tree now. I need four boys. 1, 2, 3, 4. This tree is about 4 boys around. I can look at the tree, know what kind of tree it is, know how fast they grow, know the habitat. I estimate the tree to be about 400 to 500 years old. So 500 years ago was when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So the only people that would have been coming here would have been Indians. This is a hemlock tree, and hemlock trees grow really slowly. There's a whole bunch of baby hemlock trees out there. Here's a branch off a hemlock tree. Let me show you one leaf, one whole leaf, right there. Barely see it, because they're so tiny. So it makes up for having such tiny leaves by having thousands of them. And look, the little baby pine cones. See them all over the ground?
Yeah.
Those aren't pine cones. Those are hemlock cones. That's as big as they ever get. They're not babies, that's full size. That's as big as they ever get.
Seriously?
So, imagine a little seed coming out from each little flap here. 500 years ago, one of these little cones fell down, a seed that you can just barely see came out, and just 500 years later, look what you get.
Oh my God. I want to climb it.
Now, later in school, maybe when you get in the upper grades, you will learn about a guy named Socrates. And he made his enemies very mad, and they poisoned him to death. And they used a poison called hemlock. Is that this?
Well, we ate that.
No, hemlock trees are called that because their little tiny lacy leaf foliage is like the poison hemlock that they used on Socrates. Poison hemlock is an herb that grows in a swamp, not a tree. As a matter of fact, if you take these and boil them and drink the tea, not only will it not kill you, it'll make you healthier because it's full of vitamin C and vitamin A. Hemlock tree tea is actually good for you. All right. Now, there's a tree on down the trail here that is 100 years younger. I call it little brother and little sister because, after all, these trees are both boy and girl at the same time. This is a hemlock tree that is 100 years younger than Grandma and Grandpa. Same kind of tree. Now, I want to show you one right over here. that's 100 years younger than this one. They're my measuring boys. I know all that progress you made down the trail, you're going to have to give up. Come on back. So these old trees are a reminder that this is an environment like it was before settlers came into this area. Big old trees, almost untouched down in here. Now this tree looks like it's been shot with a machine gun.
Yeah.
What did that, a machine gun?
Woodpeckers.
A woodpecker. Which one? There's only one woodpecker that does that. The redhead will drill holes. The pileated drills big rectangular holes. The hairy and the downy drill little tiny holes. These are called sap wells. And you notice they're drilled horizontal line. Why not vertical line? Why not 15 straight up? But horizontal, you see, the sap right underneath the bark of the tree is moving up like a sheet of liquid. And when you drill them horizontally, all the holes will ooze sap. When you drill a vertical line, only the bottom ones would get any sap, right? Okay? So horizontal lines, the bird knows to do that. So is the bird really eating the sap?
No.
The name of this woodpecker is the yellow-bellied sapsucker. Is it really sucking the sap?
No.
No.
It's eating the grubs.
Hey, he's on the right track here. He drills those holes, he goes away. The sap is really thick, so it takes all day for it to ooze out. And what is in sap? Lots of sugar, and it's really sticky. So bugs from all around will come to that sugary stuff, and they eat their fill, and then they discover it's sticky. They can't leave. They're stuck there. And then a couple of days later, the yellow-bellied sapsucker comes back and has sugar-coated insects. So those sap wells are actually insect traps. And the tree will seal them up after about a week. So they have to drill more.
Hey, how is that tree? It looks pretty old too.
Oh, now that tree over there is probably younger than the hemlocks because that's a fast-growing Tennessee state tree.
Oh, really?
What is our Tennessee state tree?
Tulip poplars.
Right. So that's a tulip poplar right over there. Why did they make it our state tree? Because it grows in every single county in the state of Tennessee. It's worth lots of money for you and me. And the people of Tennessee liked it so much they voted for it. But I like it too. Why would a naturalist like me like the tulip poplar to be the state tree? Not for lots of money. Not because it grows everywhere. Because it's the tallest growing living thing in eastern North America, capable of getting nearly 150 to 200 feet tall. Always the tallest tree in the forest. You can make lumber out of it. It doesn't feed much wildlife, but it's worth lots of money. It's a kind of, is it a tulip?
No.
Is it a poplar? No, it's neither a tulip nor a poplar. A tulip poplar tree is actually a magnolia. And magnolia family is a very small family. Only in America and China are there magnolia family. And we have this one, which is called a liriodendron in science. Now the liriodendrons do have cousins here, the magnolias. And I will show you some magnolias coming up. If you are a tree, you get no choice in where you have to be.
Nope.
Where you get planted is where you're going to be the rest of your life. So this tree's had a hard life trying to hang on to the top of this rock.
Hello.
It sent out some big roots and underneath the trail over there.
Maybe taller than
What kind of tree is it?
It looks like a magnolia.
Pine. Elm.
Oh.
I've not heard it yet.
Pine. Tulip poplar.
Is it that
It's the same kind as grandma and grandpa and little brother and little sister.
acorn?
Hemlock.
Hemlock.
I said hemlock.
Hey, you think this is a bad situation for a tree?
Yeah.
What about if you were planted on a rock and you fell over and got upside down? This poor hemlock got, not only did it get planted on top of a rock,
It's all over.
the rock is small, that would be cool, but it fell over and got upside down.
That one got upside down.
And then to get back so it could stay alive, it had to grow back up again. But it did it. Look, it's still alive. What a tough tree that is. Upside down and still alive.
That one, what happened to that one?
Why are all the roots exposed here?
Because it came out of the ground.
On Monday morning, before we got here with the first group, water was rushing right through where we're standing. The big flood from last Sunday night came right through here, right over the top of our bridge, left all sorts of flood debris, you know, debris stuff.
It's getting squeezed by gravity.
That's Cousin Big Leaf. A lot of people call them elephant ears. What's at the bottom of your ear?
Cartilage.
Earlobe.
Cartilage.
If you have a big elephant ear and it has a rounded spot like on the bottom of your ear at the base of the leaf, you have a tree called a big leaf magnolia. We have another magnolia, both cousins of the tulip poplar, that looks almost exactly like this. The other magnolia doesn't have earlobes though. Keep an eye out. This is a big leaf magnolia. When I show you one that doesn't have earlobes, I expect you to say, oh, that one is the umbrella tree magnolia. Hey, the concrete foundation is a pump house foundation for the CCC camp. They had a thing here called a ram pump, water-powered water pump. Water coming down a pipe, popped up a valve, pushed the water all the way up the hill by going up and down, catching that water. And that's the old foundation. There was a pump house there 80 years ago. This is called the blue hole. You'll notice right away, it is not blue. Sometimes in January it looks blue, but I have a theory. It's a popular place to jump in and cool off. Sometimes it cools you off too much. You come out shivering and blue. This is my favorite wild edible plant.
Can we eat it?
It's got a whorl of leaves go all the way around, and then an upper tier of leaves. It's called Indian cucumber root. Root is about as big as my little finger. Crunchy, sweet, pure white.
Can I eat it?
No, you have to dig it up, and we don't allow you to dig in the park, right?
Can we eat the leaves?
If you see some of these out on your property, though, look for them and try it. It's crunchy, sweet, and delicious. It's really, really square. And there's another one over there.
Yeah.
When we stopped here and looked at these two things Monday, the kids from Pelham Elementary, there were two guys in that group that immediately said, well, this looks like a
Bridge.
Very good. You're as smart as Pelham. All right. Yeah, this used to be the bridge. We tore it down because this bridge was too long, and every time we had a flood, there would be stuff washed down the creek and it would break the legs. We had to have legs in the middle because it was so long. So in October of 1990, this bridge was taken down. That's a good thing too, because in December of 1990, we got 17 inches of rain in one day. It would have been washed away if we hadn't have torn it down. We built this new bridge right down here we're about to cross to replace this one. And guess what? Out of the 13 bridges that we had on December 19th, only 2 were left on December 21st.
Gosh.
So, little fiery gizzard comes from beautiful downtown Tracy City, Tennessee. Big fiery gizzard comes right out of Gizzard Lake. Okay, so here's the meeting of the waters. Now, after little and big get together, all of a sudden the creek is twice as big. With the creek being twice as big, it starts cutting down into this hard capstone sand rock. So now we're going to go down and watch the water cutting into the rock. Isn't that awesome? Yeah! Now if you continue on down the trail in 12 miles, you'll be at Foster Falls. We ain't got time for that today.
No.
So today we're going to go back up. Hey, the trail will look different than the backside.
Yeah.
You know, just like people look different from the backside. I would tackle you before I let you go out there anyway.